I will open our meeting of Te Puna Kōrero for the 16th of November 2023. To begin, I would like to ask Councillor Wehapi to lead us in karakia.
Sure. Me inoi tātou.
Whakatakataho ki te uru, whakatakataho ki te tonga.
Kia mā kina ki uta, kia mā taratara ki tai, e hi aki ana te atakura, he tio, he huka, he hauhu, ti hei moriora.
Thank you very much, everyone. Moving through to apologies, I have apologies from Councillor Nalo and Councillor Hayward. Also note that we have Taku Parai streaming in online today. So I'll move those. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Ford. All those in favour? Opposed? That is carried. Public forum. We have no items in public forum. Conflict of interest declarations. Are there any conflicts? Councillor Ford.
Conflict with item 7.1.
Okay, cool, noted. And so I think you said you'll leave.
I will leave the room.
Leave the room for that item. Okay, cool. Thank you very much. 1 second. All right. Moving through to notification of extraordinary business. There are no items of extraordinary business. Confirmation of minutes to November 2023. I'll move those. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Leggett. Are there any corrections to the minutes? There appear to be none. All those in favour? Opposed? That is carried. Councillors, I just want to note a change of agenda order as had been signalled. Under Standing Order 9.4, I'm changing the order of the agenda so that item 7.5, long-term plan starting position, will be considered first, and following this we will consider the rest of the agenda in the order listed. So with that, I'll move us through to item 7.5. Noting as well for this that we've got Warren Allen online, who I believe will be speaking to this initially at the start. So just before we get into that, so I'll note here we've got a series of recommendations as I communicated with councillors prior. In particular, recommendations D and E as listed in the agenda had a series of options. So to begin the discussion on this, I will be moving this item to get it on the table specifically with options 4D1 and 4E2. So noting that 4D1 being agree to approve the 10-year level of capital expenditure as per attachment 3 scenario 1, and 4E2 agree to only use the local government funding agency 280% prudential covenant in council's debt level calculations, and from year 6 move towards a council limit of 270%. So that'll be our starting point for discussion, noting that that represents of the recommended options the most expensive option. We'll talk about if we come down further from that. So I'll move that to get it on the table. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Leggett, thank you very much. So I think I'll go initially to Roy to introduce the paper. Thanks, Roy.
Thank you, Chair. Councillors, this is a paper that we're seeking to get some approvals from you so we can develop the long-term plan and bring a document to you in December. The contents of this paper has been covered at a relatively high level during the various workshops we've had over the last few months, but this paper brings it to a head. It's a particularly challenging fiscal position we find ourselves into, driven primarily by the water reforms which we expect to be repealed, which means that the three waters will remain with us. We did have a relatively high investment level in the three waters for both the current year and the next few years on our capital program, and that is causing some issues in terms of, one, affordability at a rates level, but secondly, in terms of putting pressure on our debt headroom as we move down that path. So this paper tries to demonstrate that and make some suggestions around the three options in terms of the Appendix 3, what you might like to consider in terms of an appropriate capital level. It's quite clear that the higher the capital level, the higher the rate impact, and the more at risk we are of breaching our financial covenants with a local government funding authority. That's why you have some alternative scenarios there. I did want to point out that the model that we have used in the appendix was based upon, it is a model only, and it is based upon some of the starting positions that we had in our July workshop with council. So obviously there has been some movement in some of the costs since then, but nevertheless it is an important attachment in the sense that it clearly demonstrates the significant impact of the capital program and how the rates can change dramatically as a result. So while the position is indicating an 18% rate increase in year one, I can tell you it won't be a single digit number, but it probably won't land fully on 18 once we have a decision from the committee regarding the capital level. We'll go away and work on what those final numbers will be. We'll reflect on the capital program in terms of projects that will flow over more than 1 year, and as a result of that, then both the interest costs associated with the debt for those projects will be capitalised, and the depreciation will not start till the end of the project. So there's some timing issues around that, but it is fair to say that it's not going to be too far away from that number as a starting point. So I just wanted to highlight that. And I guess I'm happy to take some specific questions. It's a complicated paper, and I did invite the chair of the Audit and Risk Committee has had a look at it, because I think we're seeing ourselves in a substantially different position than we have been a couple of years ago from a risk perspective. So just seeking, I think you might like some advice from the chair going forward.
Thank you very much, Roy. So just before we move into questions, I will, Warren, look to you. Would you like to make any, initial comments, or are you happy to move straight into questions?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Good morning, councillors. Really, I don't have a lot to add. I think Roy has covered it. Roy shared this paper with me earlier in the week. It has not had detailed discussions at Audit and Risk Committee. I agree with Roy's comment that this is a complicated issue. It's very difficult. I think we had said at the last Audit and Risk Committee that this year's long-term plan was probably going to be the most challenging long-term plan put together by councils. That's an issue that's being experienced throughout the country, and this paper is a really good example of that challenge, with the uncertainty around the water reforms, with the initially proposed investment in Three Waters infrastructure, the impact that has on debt and the consequent impact on rates is a really difficult sort of balancing act. So I compliment management on the paper, and look forward to the discussion sort of through the committee, through council, and where the long-term plan finally ends up. I know it's not that helpful a comment for Porirua City Council, but this is exactly the same discussion that's being had in council chambers up and down the country. So I wish you well with the discussion today.
Cool, thank you very much, Warren. So in terms of where to from here, so I'll just remind councillors the process I would like to go through for this particular paper, noting that it is quite a complicated paper with a large number of options which we could consider. I would like us to have the opportunity to have a discussion about this and ask any questions initially without putting any amendments on the table. I will then, after we've had an opportunity to talk through things, provide people with an opportunity to bring amendments. I will not prevent you from bringing an amendment just because you have already spoken. So I'll ask for now, when we open up to discussion, that we focus this on discussion and questions. I believe we have Warren until 9 o'clock.
Just before 9, Chair.
Just before 9. So in particular, if you have any questions for Warren, if you could prioritise those, that would be brilliant. So with that, I will open the floor to questions and discussion. Does anyone have any?
Sorry.
Councillor Ligon.
Sorry, can I ask Roy for you to run through for us, just to remind us all again, sitting around the table here, with regard to the scenarios. I think we all appreciate the position that we're in as a council in terms of the we've done what ratepayers wanted us to do in terms of looking at investment in infrastructure, particularly around water. We're now faced, because of the reasons already given, delay of water reform, etc., with an affordability problem that makes it difficult for us. And we want to make best of the long-term infrastructure plans, particularly around water, that we've already been through, and how we in the longer term, as opposed to the shorter term, still achieve what we want to achieve in terms of water quality and those sorts of things. So I understand that in the first 2 years we're looking at reducing capital spend by $60 million each year. Can you run us through that, please, Roy, with those scenarios?
Yeah, certainly, through you, Chair. Yes, so, and this is a recommendation for this committee, is that you recall that the capital program for this fiscal year was approved at 184 million, but you determined to only fund it for 70% of that, which is fine. But that extra 30%, which is roughly 60 million, will ultimately come to charge when those projects are complete, because we didn't stop a project. So the 184 million plus what was projected for the first year of the long-term plan at around about 180 million as well, would have seen us basically breach our covenants with the local government funding authority, and is not a sustainable position to be in. So what management have looked at is reducing this year's capital program by 60 million to bring it down to 120 million, and reduce the starting position for the first year of the long-term plan from approximately 160 million to the 100 million level. And that effectively brings us down to a starting position through the model of a rate increase of around 18%. Without that, you were faced with at least a 24% rate increase, as well as a probable breach, so not a position you could find yourselves in. Now, clearly, I think everyone accepts that it's unlikely that that volume of capital could be spent in any 1 year, but ultimately it will fall against us as a cost, and it's a timing issue in terms of carry forward. So the model assumes that the money is spent in the year, so you can see where it sits. The challenge with the capital program has been a heavy investment in the three waters. So the model in Appendix 2, you'll notice that under all three scenarios, the capital expenditure for the first 5 years is basically the same. And the reason for that is that we need approximately a 5-year period to wash through the commitments of the Three Waters program that we had embarked upon. By way of example, the Aotea Reservoir was scheduled to start sort of partway this year or next year. We have pushed that out for as far as we can for about 3 years, because it's not a critical delivery at this point in time, but it still is a commitment we need to spend, and that takes time to flow through. We obviously have the big capital project of the storage tank, which we're committed to, at around about 85 million, so that will flow through as well. So all those sort of big ticket items, as well as ensuring we still do spend money on renewals in the Three Waters area, sees us needing to stay at around about that 100 to 110 million for the first 5 years. The second 5 year of the long-term plan, we have the ability to drop that away. The challenge is also whether, if you still have the Three Waters at that point in time, you will want to revisit those capital numbers, because it's quite clear that this council cannot sustain the investment in the Three Waters that everyone would like to see, and what in fact has been projected in terms of an unconstrained view. That was going to be handled by the water services entry under the proposed legislation. If that does not happen, then the council will be left with a situation where the gap between what they can deliver and afford to deliver versus what would be expected will grow. So that will be a challenge for the next LTP, but that's the basis upon which we have developed that model, and there is very little I can see without a dramatic reversal to reduce those first 5 years' expenditure. And then you've got the opportunity to reduce the expenditure under the scenarios presented, and you should see from the example that as that capital expenditure falls in the last 5 years, or 6 year, last 5 years of the plans, the rate level drops. The other decision that table highlights is the impact of the headroom capability. So the model indicates the rate levels required not to breach, and at the 280% level, the rates that we've indicated will get you within 5 million of that particular breach level, which is very tight. So you are a little bit exposed to two things. One is increased prices from construction going forward, and potential declines in revenue, both of which will cause some issues in terms of that metric. So that's why the paper also discusses moving towards a 270% limit, which even at that level will not give you a lot of headroom. I would point out that traditionally we've been well under that headroom. We've had a self-imposed level of, I think, 175%. This year we still met that with the annual plan at, I think, about 166%. But that, of course, was because we were only funding 70% of the program. Many councils use that headroom as a buffer to cover emergencies, for example, natural disasters, if the insurance doesn't pick up the money, or giving some timing, or if a new project comes along, they have the ability to use that headroom to actually use it. We're heading into a situation where we don't have that luxury anymore, and it will take a number of years until we can get to that position. The quicker the Three Waters is resolved, and if they go to an entity in some form, that will free up debt and give you then the opportunity to revisit your capital program, and I would suggest invest more in the community side and the roading side, which you'll have the ability to do so. Does that answer your question?
It does. Supplementary. So in here, there's also, not on the first three options, there's an option of what you've described, and we understand that the nuclear approach to reducing capital expenditure, which would be fair to say, I agree that would be ill-advised for us. Would you agree, given that we have a commitment to projects that will benefit the city in terms of infrastructure going forward, and that it would be silly, or definitely ill-advised and silly, to stop them now and try and start them again at some stage in the future? Is that correct?
Through you, Chair. That's actually Appendix 4, which I've called Modelling with Minimum Debt. So that appendix is designed to demonstrate what would happen if you just basically invested in capital based upon your renewals program that's generated from depreciation. So effectively you do not borrow. The model itself indicates for the first 2 years we still have to spend in excess of our depreciation funding, because we've got those commitments, particularly with the wastewater storage tank. But it does demonstrate that for the sort of last 7 years of the plan there, if you were to go down to basically minimal levels, you can see the impact on both headroom and also on rates. I haven't advised that. I think that's a very, very difficult position for council to be in. You would actually then be only able to do renewals basically, and a lot of the projects that we have would need to be deferred. The challenge you have is that going forward, you still only have that, I guess, the cash generated from the business, from the depreciation, as your basic tool. Anything above that, new projects in particular, will be debt funded.
Sorry, 1 second, Ross. Just noting that we've got Warren for a few more minutes. I've just got a quick question for Warren in relation to what Roy's just touched on around headroom. And the options we've been presented here around moving right up to that 280% level versus trending back down to 270%. So that's the difference between options 4E1 and 4E2. I wondered if you could just speak to those and your perspective around the level of risk and that amount of debt.
Thank you, Chair. I haven't had the detail of those options that you're referring to. I just had the bones of the paper. But I agree with Roy. I think it's sort of very, the council or the committee need to be very sort of conscious that to sort of go right up to that headroom or up to the covenant levels of your debt really does set the council up with a set of handcuffs, if you like, because if anything was to go wrong in terms of revenue or expenditure in the future, or a natural disaster, it leaves you with sort of very limited sort of opportunities. So, I think the discussion around that headroom level is really really important, probably then. As a sort of subsequent discussion to that, the impact that has on rates, and trying to work out what is affordable in terms of a rate increase.
Cool, thank you, Warren. And just noting as well, I've got next, I'm about to come to Mayor Baker. We've only got Warren for a few more minutes, so I just want to look around the room for if anyone has any questions specifically for Warren. Don't appear to be. Okay. Councillor Phelan.
Morning, Warren. I was just wondering if you could talk to, please, and I'm not sure if you've already said that you haven't seen it or not, sorry, the modelling with the minimum debt, if you could speak to I guess the risks, or if you could add to anything that Roy has said around that approach.
Not really. I think I think Roy's sort of covered it off. You've got a real dichotomy here, haven't you? You've got these quite major infrastructure projects which are underway in the first years, which need to be completed, and they have an impact. They're substantially more than the level of depreciation funding, so therefore they will increase the debt levels, which certainly at the predicted interest rates will increase the rate. So I really can't be any more specific at this point on this, but what I'm proposing to do is have a sort of detailed briefing with Roy following this committee meeting, and I'll get a lot more sort of information from that and be in a better position to advise at at future discussions on the long-term plan.
Cool, thank you, Warren. I think that's the questions that we had for you. I'll come back to Roy now.
Thank you, Chair. Look, just one thing about the headroom. If you notice from all the scenarios, we're proposing, because of the reduction of the 120 million for this year and next year, over those 2 years, that 120 million creates us a bit of a buffer for the headroom. And if you have a look at it, we're sort of okay for the first 3 years based on that program, but it quickly runs out because we keep going at that level of expenditure of 100 million versus, say, 40 million with the cash, so we're always borrowing. So that's the issue and the challenge for the headroom. At some point we will need to either increase rates to generate some capacity with the headroom, or you do need to review that capital program downwards. And even in my projections, down at the 270 level, you don't have a lot of spare capacity with that. So ultimately, you would, I think the paper suggests a long-term aim going to about 250, to creating enough buffer for you. But clearly, I don't think you can actually achieve 250 in this long-term plan without significant rate rises in the last 5 years of the plan. And when I'm talking about significant, it's well into double digits.
All right, so I'll now come back to Ross. So I interrupted your train before. You're all done? Okay, cool. Mayor Baker.
You'll come back. Thank you. It's a question and a comment, really. I'm not for your option one, your scenario one, obviously. I'm preferring scenario two. None of this is palatable to any of our ratepayers. Anyone in a double digit, most of them can't even afford a single digit, let's be honest. And this is a signal to government that local government is not funded correctly, and we're all in major strife. Now, I know these decisions are tough and no one wants to sit at the table and no one wants our job, but they all want to scream at us, and these are terrible decisions. But our capital program, if we obviously need to do cut, we're going to have to take some roading off, some water off, all those sort of things. If we cut in our water, which we are going to, will our residents see more leaks from Wellington Water, or are we going to have the same service we've had this year? So, like, we're on about our water loss, obviously, and saving water. Will the reduction in our program see more leaks, or are we going to do more renewals, or are we going to go backwards? So like we've come forward and we've spent all this money and now we're going to reduce. Are we going to see something less for people? Because there's no point running forward and then going, we've run out of money now, let's go backwards again.
Through you, Chair. I have the program from Wellington Water based upon our projections for both capital and the reduction in OPEX. So at the workshop on the 30th of November, we'll bring those Wellington Water programs to you, as well as the other asset management plans for the rest of the business. So you can see sort of what's, at the big project level, what's happening. With regards the OPEX proposal of the 12 million as per this paper, they have come back with showing how that would be spent, and they've also given some options if we were to give them another million, what they would spend it on, and a further million again. And that again will come on the 30th. I can say that from what they're proposing, in terms of the leaks, they are not looking at actually spending less on leaks. They're reprioritising around the place. And interesting enough, particularly around the wastewater treatment plant, the maintenance costs on that is actually more. So there's those areas quite important to us, and there's sort of no reduction of that. So they have made some reductions elsewhere, but I think that's manageable. But you'll see that on the 30th. So in terms of the capital program, one of the things that we are working with Wellington Water on is that we do want to support renewals and to increase that progressively year upon year. That is the strategy. That may mean some other movements within the program, and particularly as we move out some of the big capital projects, we can actually achieve that. But from memory, there is no significant, that I can see, any reduction in terms of those water leak for renewals. That seems to be a priority, go all the way through.
Okay.
And we can tell them that as well.
Okay, thank you. I'll talk later.
All right. Any other questions or comments from councillors? Councillor Duncan.
Yeah, thanks, Roy. This is a poison chalice, all right, isn't it? There's nothing good coming out of this. I just wonder about the new capital projects, that list that we've got in the paper there. Are they all up for cancellation, if you like?
Through you, Chair, those projects that we've identified are, we're pushing them out as far as we can in terms of the long-term plan, outside of particularly the first 3-year period. So they're more likely to, apart from the projects which we have identified regarding around the rubbish and that, the rest of them will tend to be in years 6 onwards, and some of them towards the end of the program, and will hopefully fall into the following LTP. We are only producing or recommending a 10-year LTP this year, so you won't see all of it. But I think it's important to recognise that those are on our plan for the community to see that. And it is about that balance as we go forward, and as water moves away, we can certainly move into that area. The one other thing I just wanted to note in terms of the numbers here, and I've indicated in terms of sort of the base number, we just have received from Greater Wellington advice of their increase for the water levy. That's just around about 24% for this year. That has not been factored into any of our papers yet, and that's a cumulative increase, if that goes ahead, of around 60% over 2 years. So that's some of the challenges that we are having, and that for us is about a 1.5% increase in rates. So it is a poison chalice. Does that answer your question regarding those capital? And of course, the other item in there is the OPEX associated and CAPEX associated with the rubbish, which is the C&D, and the collection of the rubbish and the organics. So that's that around 9%, which we will come back in December and show you where that fits into the program. But we are looking to push that out as far as possible in terms of the program.
I had Mayor Baker next.
Thank you. So, Roy, the increase from Greater Wellington that hasn't been factored in, does that factor in that we have water meters on our books? I know that Regional Council, if we don't have water meters, they don't want to do another water source. So the councils that don't want to do water meters, which are silly enough not to do water meters, will get a higher charge for water, is how it comes out, isn't it? So the ones who get meters will get a better charge. Can you confirm that?
Through you, Chair, I don't know the answer to that. Mayor. I can tell you that that number that I related to was just our residential impact, because we do have commercial, we have meters on commercial, and we fully charge that.
I'll just respond slightly more detail. So the bulk water charge that we get from Greater Wellington is shared on a estimate of usage. If the early adopters for water meters will be able to identify leaks more quickly, and therefore that bulk water charge will become more accurate, and you'll be able to fix the leaks more quick. Well, the big leaks anyway. I mean, we're not fixing all leaks at the moment. So over time, that would be an advantage, as long as that bulk water charge remains at that, on that methodology. We have been enthusiastic as a region to go together, but that may not be possible.
Okay, thank you. Because this LTP, even though we're going out for 10 years, we're in this pickle, as I'll call it, which is a nightmare because of waters, 3 waters. So the new government, when we get one, needs to realise that local government needs waters off its books, or another funding mechanism, because we are all broken. And no matter how many times I say this, the ratepayer, which is the taxpayer, cannot afford it. We can't afford 50% rate rises over the next 5 years. I mean, who's going to live in our cities? We're all going to Australia. I mean, we are simply stuffed. So I'd like to move option 2, Josh.
Okay, cool. Thank you, Mayor Baker. So I'll come back to that amendment shortly. Next, I had Councillor Filo.
Thank you, Chair. So it was just following on from Councillor Duncan's comment around the additional CapEx list. Are they included in the headroom, the rates headroom table that you've got there, where you say it pushes out beyond the 3 years? So are they included in those percentages in year 4 and 5?
Through you, Chair. Looking at that list, they are not in the 10-year program you've seen. Having said that, the resource recovery facility of 20 million is in the 10-year period, but the assumption is it's 100% funded by MFE, so therefore it has nil impact on both debt and also rates. So that's technically it's in there, but it's not. Does that answer your question?
Yep, thank you. And just up to that. So on point number 44, which lists operational additional funding, can you just confirm this is not included in the current percentages, or it is?
Through you, Chair. No, the items listed in 44 are not yet into the model. The model was based upon, as you recall, we started with an opening position of, I think 7.1% was the base. We then had the balanced budget, and actually, no, I correct myself. No, we have adjusted for those numbers. It is in the 18% model.
So that's
number.
included in the
Those
18?
numbers there are included in it.
Okay.
Councillor Ford.
Thank you. My question has been asked and answered. It was around the resource recovery facility and its inclusion.
Cool. Thank you. In that case, Councillor Wehapi.
Thank you. First of all, I would like to support the Mayor's comments in regards to the water reforms and the position that we are in at the moment. But what I'm reading, I didn't know whether to laugh or cry, to be honest, when I read this paper. Laugh only because we kind of could see this happening from the get-go, but here we are. What I read from this is that the more money we spend on the capital program, the more debt. Is that correct? That's right. So we're in a position, I guess, where we will need to cut capital, spend, in the capital program. I'm not too sure about cutting the water infrastructure commitments that we have done, because in the future that's actually gonna help us, and also it will cost more if we just keep putting it off over the years. But there are certainly some other items in that capital program that we're going to have to think long and hard about, and actually, just call it, really, at the end of the day, as tough as it is. I just wanted to make that. And I'll also be supporting scenario 2, not scenario 1.
Cool, thank you. Does anyone have any further comments? Councillor Leggett?
Look, I support the Mayor, and Councillor Weehapi has supported as well, as I'm sure we all do, in terms of a call for a different approach. However, as Councillor Weehapi pointed out, we are in this position now and we have to make some hard decisions. And I think that this paper is pointing us in the direction, gives us the opportunity to go in a direction which is not ideal and probably not palatable to many people, but we are having to make those decisions and we'll be forced to go ahead. I just wanted to say that I support in this paper also going for a balanced budget over 3 years, because even though we put it off for all this time, we need to bite that bullet. Otherwise, we are debt funding stuff that we don't need to debt fund, including operational expenditure. So we need to move towards that as quickly as is possible. So I'll be supporting option scenario 2 as well, and I'll look forward to management coming back to us with some detail about how this looks, because as we pointed out in this paper, there are other things in here, including collection of waste and other things that are forcing costs up even further. And we need to be, I think, we need to address those things and be brave in terms of giving people options of what they want to do when we go out for the long-term plan consultation. Because, I certainly don't want to see as a ratepayer costs of rates going up like they are now, but I don't see any option other than what we've got in front of us at the table, or options at the moment, without going nuclear, which will be bad for the whole community in the long term.
Thank you, Councillor Leggett. Councillor Waddle.
Yeah, I don't really want to repeat what Mayor Baker and Councillor Weehapi and Leggett have both said, because I totally agree. I think Mayor Baker's comments around the situation being stuffed is putting it lightly. And I think, I just want to signal to the 123 people sitting in Parliament, whenever they get to sit down and actually do some damn work, they need to do some work. I just want a quick question for Roy, real easy one. Can you remind us what dollar figure amounts to 1% of rates of OPEX spend?
Through your chair, approximately $1 million.
Sweet. Thank you.
All right. Councillor Duncan.
Yeah, look, you only need to look at Facebook or the letters to the editor in the paper and see what Wellington are going through about their intended rates rise to see what reaction to our long-term plan proposal when we go out for consultation will mean. People are not going to want it. I mean, they're going to want the nuclear option. And we need to be under no illusion that if water is taken off our books, that's going to be great for council. It's not going to help ratepayers, because they will still be paying for that water through bills from a different entity. So it ain't going to make a blind bit of difference to the people in the community. That's what worries me. I see 50% over the next 5 years. Where does that sit with affordability? I mean, how on earth can we couch that in an affordable terms? It worries the hell out of me. It's a rhetorical question.
Yeah, if someone could answer that would be fantastic. Did anyone else have questions or comment? Councillor Johnson.
Look, more of a comment to confirm I'm supporting scenario 2. I'm not going to repeat what everyone has said, but I know as at today in the papers it's looking like an 18% rates rise, but we're working hard and hoping to get it below that. And I think we're also seriously considering the well-being of the city, as well as managing the huge concern of affordability in our city through rates and expenses as well. Thank you.
All right, okay. I've got a few comments and then I'll open the floor up to amendments after that. So you obviously completely agree with the comments from Mayor Baker around the need to take water off our books, and Councillor Leggett's comments around the balanced budget as well, moving that as quickly as possible, I also agree with. So for me here, we obviously started this conversation from a potential 24% rates increase and looking at a probable breach. And I think it's important that we remember that. That's the context that we're working from here. And one of the comments I've made before, as much as I obviously do not support a 24% rates rise, I think when we go out to consultation, I personally believe it's important we actually include that option to make it clear that whatever option we land on today, that doesn't actually represent us doing everything we said we would do last time, so people are aware of the context that we're working within. So we're stuck in this difficult combination. No matter what we decide we're going to do here, we're going to have to increase rates, we're going to have to increase debt, and we're going to have to cut services, that holy or dreaded trinity. And it's made more difficult by the uncertainty around future for our water infrastructure. So tough decisions on both spending and debt. On spending, so looking at at 4D and the different spending tracks we have here, I think the question that we have, particularly given that the difference between the three options we've been given here largely relates to the out years, so it's from 29-30 onwards, the amount of spending that we're projecting for then, is do we make some of the mistakes that have been made in the past by planning for a lower level of investment and potentially leaving a high degree of what I describe as infrastructure debt, so just spending we're not doing on infrastructure that we need, or do we make that difficult choice about the investments that we need? So my concern is looking at something like the second option where we do taper off spending a little bit from 29-30 onwards. We know that when the next council comes in, they're going to have another look at that, and they're going to be put in a very similar position potentially to the one that we're in right now. And I'm very conscious of the fact that at times it sort of feels like we've been thrown a little bit of a hospital pass, and I really don't want to do that for the next council. And so that's part of the reason why I support option 1 over option 2. I think it's the same level of spending over the next 5 years or so. And if we plan now for a level of expenditure that realistically, I think we know, even if we plan for lower now, the next council is probably going to have to look at it increasing it again. I would prefer to plan for that up front. So I will be supporting option 1 when we come to voting on those. On the debt, I just want to touch on that again quickly. There wasn't a lot of discussion around that. I'm not sure if that means that people aren't planning on bringing any amendments. I do think this option we have around tapering down to 270% faster is the appropriate one, particularly given some of the comments we heard before from both Roy and from Warren. So I will be supporting that option as well, listed as E2. So that's the position that I'm in. I think everyone's had an opportunity to speak now. So I'm now opening the floor up to amendments. I'll start with Mayor Baker.
Okay, so I agree with everything else. I just want to change it from option 1 to option 2.
Yeah.
So that's my amendment there.
All right.
Do you want to get a seconder before I speak to it?
Yeah, cool. So we've got an amendment for shifting 4D1 to 4D2, moved by Mayor Baker and seconded by Councillor Ford. Mayor
Okay.
Baker.
I agree with what you've said in a manner of speaking, Josh, but you're the only one that sits at the table that doesn't pay rates. Nothing against you, but you understand the difference. So from your point of view, as a renter, I don't know whether your rates go up at the same what you pay. So from your landlord. So our ratepayers who sit here are different. So quite often the government one they don't pass that on to their tenants. So that part of the city get their same fees, whereas the rest of the city are going up, and we can't do a 50% increase. I know we need to do that, but in 5 years' time, hopefully water will be off our books, or there'll be a different way. I understand what you're saying, and I'm not having a go at you personally. I'm just trying to explain where I'm coming from. So that's the reason I've gone for option 2, because I think in the next 5 years we can change things with our annual plans obviously going forward. Once we do get a new government, we'll see hopefully a new direction, but everything's topsy at the moment. So that's why I was doing that option. So, yeah. Thank you.
Cool. Thank you, Mayor Baker. Any other comments, Councillor Ford?
No, I just supported the Mayor with this amendment because, as she said, and as others have said around the table, all of the options are almost non-palatable for our people, and this is almost the best of the worst case scenario. And yeah, we're in the pickle or in the crap. Really, we're in the crap. Others have said, like the Deputy Mayor has said as well, we need to make some tough decisions around some of our CapEx spend. And I think, we need to pull up our big adult panties and get on.
Thank you, Councillor Ford. Are there any other comments in relation to this amendment being put? There do not appear to be. Okay, so I'm going to put the amendments. We're not voting on the full motion. We're just voting on whether to include Mayor Baker's amendment. I'll ask for a show of hands on this. So all those in favour, please raise your hand. All right, that appears to be I don't see a hand from Taku. That is a hand from Taku. All right, so noting that appears to be everyone other than myself. That is very clearly carried. And I'll note my vote against that. Taku, was there anything that you wanted to say on this item, or are you comfortable with?
I'm comfortable with the discussion. I think the only way is to push through it as best as we can.
Okay, cool. Thank you, Taku. So, noting that amendment has been successful, are there any further amendments, or are we happy with where we've landed? There do not appear to be any. Okay, so just so we all know exactly what we're voting for, it's the motion as had been originally put, except that 4D has changed from option 1 to option 2. We've stayed with E2, with 4E2. So bearing that in mind, I will put the motion. All those in favour? Opposed? That is carried. Thank you very much, everyone. All right. Thank you. We are now moving back through to item 7.1, noting that Councillor Ford is leaving the room per her conflict. I'll give her a moment to do that. All right. Thanks, Roy. Okay, so we're moving through to item 7.1. So I'm going to move this to put it on the table, noting the Chair's recommendation that I signalled earlier in the week, explicitly including the ethical commitment as had initially been proposed in the consultation document. The wording for that is up on the screen currently. So again, just to begin this discussion, I'll move it to get it on the table. Do I have a seconder? Anyone like to second this to get it on the table?
I'll second it, but
Cool.
I'll make an amendment.
Yeah, happy to note that. Thank you, Mayor Baker. So that's now on the table. So I will go now for this to be introduced by council officers. Jade, were you going to speak to this? Cool, thank you very much.
Thank you, Chair. So I will begin by taking the papers as read, but would like to highlight the main points of my paper. The consultation process resulted in 89 submissions from our community, and I have included a detailed submissions analysis as an attachment. The consultation has informed the final recommendation, which is to include a comprehensive sinking lid in our policy, our Class 4 policy. This will remove the ability for Class 4 venues to relocate and merge across Porirua City, and the draft policy has also been attached for your approval. I would like to note that I am not recommending we make the ethical commitment at this time, which is to not apply for grant funding from poker machines. The main change to the preferred option under the statement of proposal is partly due to council not having full support from our community to make this commitment at this time.
and also partly due to the financial considerations that you've all just discussed in the previous item, and a potential rates increase and how that might impact on our communities. So more than happy to take any questions. Thank you.
Cool, thank you. I'll have open questions in a second. I just want to quickly speak to why I've brought it with this recommendation around including the ethical commitments. Obviously, we discussed this at length through the consultation period and before it as well. I believe the arguments that we heard from the relevant organisations that specialise in the harm of gambling and gambling addiction were in favour of this. So some of the reasons that I wanted to have this included, I think it's important that we show leadership as a council on something like this, where there is substantial harm in our community and there is a clear ask from the relevant organisations around how we can do so. Obviously, that could have an impact on our ability to fund certain activities. My understanding about the cost impact of that is equivalent to roughly a 0.2% rates rise, I think, just looking to officers to make sure I've got that correct. 0.22, sorry, which obviously we're in an environment where we're struggling with rates increases anyway. We talk about the cost burden on our communities. My concern is we know from the submissions that we've heard on this that generally speaking, the cost impact of using funding from gambling activities to fund community activities it amounts essentially to, on average, taking from the poor to give to the more well-off. It's a regressive policy. And yes, we have cost of living concerns at the moment, and we should be acting on those cost of living concerns. I personally do not believe the appropriate way to do that is to reduce the rates burden through taking money from people who are worse off compared to those who may be in a position where they're better able to afford it. So I realise there'll be some disagreement on this around the table, but that's why I've started from this position. So that's where I stand. I'll open now to discussion and amendments. So I'd like to go to Mayor Baker.
Thank you. Yes, I'd like to put an amendment removing number 4. Do I have a seconder for that before I do it? He's not listening. Sorry.
Okay, cool. Just as I suspect some people probably agree with you, Mayor Baker. Yep. I've just been advised that as the seconder, there is a standing orders issue with moving and seconding.
Okay.
So I wonder if you've proposed an amendment, if anyone else would be happy to move and second that amendment.
You want to move it? Who's seconding it?
Cool. So we've got a mover and seconder for the amendment from councillors Filo and Weehape. But if you'd like to speak to that, Mayor Baker.
Thank you. I was being nice putting on the table for you. Sorry. We did have people in those groups who came and presented who were who disagreed, obviously. But for me, we are looking at large rate increases. The money we get for pokies that we apply for, I should say, from funding organisations, helps run our bus that goes to our low decile schools, our Love Local, Matariki, Waitangi Day, and all kinds of other events. And without those, we're not a city. If we then don't take funding and we get rid of all the events, we're not doing anything. We're not here as a city just to be, I know people say cut it back to the basics and do roading and pipes. Actually, if you don't have these festivals and run the bus, the kids can't go to swimming. They can't go to Pātaka, all these sort of places. So I can't agree with that because I don't think we can afford to put more on the ratepayer. And I can't stop people gambling. I know it's their choice, but they can go online as well, and they're doing that. So the sinking lid is about as far as we can go. So I can't support that, sorry.
Cool. Thank you, Mayor Baker. I've got Councillor Weehape.
Thank you. I do agree with the Mayor's comments. I think, with your comments around taking from the poor and giving to the well-off, I can tell you right now that those kids that take advantage of Te Pahi are not well off. The Love Local event is actually a brilliant event for businesses. It's their livelihood. They need that money to be able to survive and pay their rates. The Waitangi Day is our biggest event for our city, and as you can imagine, we get so many people from our community out there as well. So I was struggling. I do agree, though, from an ethical point of view, in general, that it's not a great feeling. But my issue would be if we're not applying for this money is still going to go somewhere else. And why would I prefer to have that for our people here in Porirua?
Thanks, Councillor Wehapi. Any further questions or comments? Councillor Duncan.
Yeah, look, I take your point about these groups that came in and asked us to take the ethical option. But these people are all funded out of those gambling proceeds. So it's a bit rich to actually come here with the temerity of saying, you guys should take the ethical option, but we'll just keep on taking the money to do what we do. If they were effective, they'd be out of a job. But in fact, nothing actually happened with the sinking lid that we have. No change to the problem gamblers. So yeah, I take that with a grain of salt. This problem is just another example of the government abdicating its role as a lawmaker, and they're setting council off against council. And I think they need to take a hard look at this and say, we'll set the standards for what councils have to live by, but don't expect councils to have to make the rules around it, because all we do is force people to go into other jurisdictions. So I support the Mayor or Deputy Mayor's amendment there.
Councillor
It's
Field.
Councillor Filo's.
Yeah, and congratulations on your promotion, Councillor Field.
I want to start by saying that I admire you, Josh, Chair, for making a stand in what you believe in. Especially in the setting right now, and I mean that. I do mean that. I don't agree with what you've said. I do and I don't. So, in terms of it being regressive, it's definitely not perfect. However, I do think that there are other countries where the pokey profits go straight to the private sector. So in this case, New Zealand's quite unique that our community is actually able to get funding. In terms of showing leadership, yeah, we did hear from quite a few organisations. However, what I didn't hear was any evidence that not taking the funding would have a meaningful impact on the harm that is being done. But what I can see, if we take what you're suggesting, is that the community, our community, will either, one, get a rates rise, or two, miss out on what the funding covers. So the wider community has the potential to miss out and be negatively affected, while it doesn't actually have any real evidence of showing that it will actually help. What it just looks like is that we're trying to look like we're doing something, but it not really having a meaningful impact. I think that every little bit counts in terms of, it's only 0.22%. Every little bit does count, and we've just that's been highlighted in the paper just before. This is definitely something does need to be done. We have an issue in our city with the pokies, with it being so high. I don't want to, that's a fact, but I don't believe this, the option 4 is a way to fix it. The others, yes, and even more needs to be done. We need to lobby at a central government level so that there are things in place. I mean, there's some other countries, and we spoke about this on the phone, there's some countries around the world that actually you can't put cash in. You have to have a registered card. That's in Norway, I believe, and they've had real results in actually reducing the problem gambling, because it sounds very controlling, but there are, what I'm saying is there's other solutions that could have more of a potent impact on this issue. So, I'm not supporting option 4. That's why I made the amendment. Kia ora.
Thank you, Councillor Filo. I have Councillor Waddle.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Councillor Filo, for bringing this amendment. Very, very good. I also want to thank Jade and the council officers and the team who did this work. It was a challenging discussion, and I think throughout the hearings as well, we heard, the real impact that these Class 4 gaming machines pose to our people. And I think the sinking lid policy that we're going for, hopefully, after we've discussed this amendment, which I'll speak to in a second, is really going to be fantastic to really reduce the harm that it's causing. To speak to this amendment, kindly brought to us by Councillor Filo, I think I agree with you, Josh, in the ethical nature of this. We should show leadership, but you and I have spent 4 years around this council table looking for every little bit to save our ratepayers, and I think to save us 0.22% on events and community minded programs like Te Pahi Bus, I think is fantastic, and I think we need to. I will be supporting Councillor Filo's amendment in the fact that we just making sure everyone knows who put the amendment, that we maintain these events that bring people to our city, but also provide a great day out for a lot of our locals and a good connection point. And it's not, as you've put it, going to the well-off. I think it is going to everyone. So, thank you.
Cool. Thanks, Councillor Waddle. Next, Councillor Johnson.
I'm not supporting number 4 today. I think the reason is I've done a bit of a personal turn. I was keen to support that initially. I was very supportive and saw some real need or some pretty serious situations in the gambling in Porirua, and I've been deeply concerned about it. However, I've also looked at the other side, and I think we need to bring some joy to our city and keep some joy there. And this is a way of us doing that without it impacting rates. And for those that have been online listening to our previous long-term plan strategy position, it's pretty tough. Not only the decision-making here, but the future of what residents are facing as well. And we're certainly in agreement with that. I also am with Councillor Filo in that this is where central government needs to get involved. No, but seriously, I went into a local place recently. I wanted a cup of coffee. I couldn't get a cup of coffee or a drink, but the pokies were open at what I considered to be an early hour. So these are the sorts of things I think that government needs to be considering and looking at a little differently. And I also, I think it feels also that we do have good support agencies in the city, and whilst the intention isn't to put you under more pressure, I do encourage you to hold your head up while you work hard at what you're doing. There is some understanding after listening to everybody on what you're going through. So thank you for that too, and to all the staff that have pulled the information together.
Councillor Leggett.
I take the points of previous speakers. I mean, there are some good things that have been said. However, I will say it's easy to make an ethical stand with ratepayers' money. And given our previous discussion, I can't see why we're even having the damn discussion, quite frankly, because every little bit counts, and you can see the position that we're in. We're not in a position to make any ethical decision about this. So that's the beginning and end of it. I won't be supporting for or supporting the amendment.
All right. So I think that brings us to the end of the discussion around the amendment. Sorry, Councillor Duncan.
No, yeah, I just want to talk about the sinking lid, but
I'll come back to that after we've done the amendment. Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. So I will now put the amendment, so just so everyone is clear, that's replacing what is currently on the screen of option 4 with the wording in the original agenda, being that note that the policy does not include an ethical commitment as included in the statement proposal for consultation. So I'll just confirm that that's what we're voting to do. So we're moving it back to that amendment there down the bottom. So I will put that motion. All those in favour, please say aye. Opposed? Okay, that is carried, and I will note that I personally voted against that. So that brings us back to the discussion around the substantive motion. So we've now moved back to what was originally in the agenda, and I was now going to come to Councillor Duncan.
Yeah, on the sinking lid, the comprehensive sinking lid, it strikes me as absurd that we would remove the ability for a site to be changed. If we see the CBD, where the majority of them are, as being a deprived area, why wouldn't you let a group move out of that deprived area into another area that was more stable, I don't know.
Are you looking for an answer? Yeah.
Through you, the Chair. The purpose of the comprehensive sinking lid is really looking at reducing the total number of gaming machines over time. So where a venue must relocate for whatever reason, this comprehensive sinking lid states that you cannot move your gaming machines with you. So the overall purpose is reduction.
But that doesn't bring about a reduction. They'll just stay there in that deprived area that seems such a bad place to be.
If that's what the business and the venues choose, then that's what they choose.
So they just stay there and the numbers stay exactly the same?
Through you, the Chair, potentially.
Seems silly.
Councillor, we happy?
Sorry, around that, when we're talking about the deprived area and the CBD, do we know, since the post hotel has been used for emergency accommodation, how that has affected those gaming machine areas in the CBD? Increased spend.
Through you, the Chair. My research did not look into the connection between the post hotel. I can say, however, Porirua City venues do have the highest per gaming machine spend in the entire country. So that has been an increase in the last few years, but we cannot correlate whether that's for any particular reason.
So I am in favour of the sinking lid, particularly around the CBD. Yeah, I wouldn't want to see it anywhere else.
Thank you. And I think to add to that, I'm in the same position as you, Councillor, you're happy. And I actually just wanted to note that I thought the comments you made before around the investment in events and the money that we're using this for, I completely agree with those comments. My disagreement is just around the source of funding, but I completely agree other than that. And yeah, on the sinking lid as well, I wanted to note that I really strongly support this, and despite the fact we've had the discussion around the amendment at the start, I don't want to get away from the fact that I will be supporting the substantive motion here. I think we're absolutely heading in the right direction. I'm really delighted about the introduction of that sinking lid. Does anyone have any other comments? Councillor Leggett.
So I asked a question the other day about whether under this comprehensive sinking lid policy, if an establishment, if it was a natural disaster or if a fire raised them to the ground, would they be able to commence business again?
Through you, the Chair. So I did reach out to the Department of Internal Affairs, who manage the overall licence processes of the venues, and I can read their response. So basically, if a venue was to have a natural disaster of some sort, if in the event of an unforeseen circumstance leading to a venue needing to be closed for 6 months or more, the venue and this corporate society that looks after those EGMs is required to apply for an extension of a non-gaming with the Department of Internal Affairs. So in essence, they can apply for an extension to ensure they have that time to rebuild or whatever it is that they need to do for that venue. So the DIA will allow them that's more than that 6 month period if needed.
Right, thank you. Can I ask another question? I may have misread stuff, but for the councils that have introduced this comprehensive sinking lid policy, has there been any discernible effect on problem gambling in those areas?
Through you, the Chair, my research did not look into that, so I do not have an answer at this stage.
Okay, so, and that brings me to my main point, as much and all as I believe that this is a central government problem in terms of, pushing us in a particular direction. And I also believe that decisions should be data-driven around facts. There are no facts here. There's a lot about problem gambling, and I accept that, the harm of problem gambling. But I have seen nothing that would suggest that a comprehensive sinking lid policy will lead to a reduction in problem gambling in Porirua. You put a squeeze on one area and something pops out somewhere else. So until there is a concerted nationwide approach to this, which I doubt will ever come about, but I think that this is virtue signalling by us and will have no discernible effect on problem gambling.
All right. Mayor Baker.
I do agree with you, Councillor Leggett. About our venues in the city centre, is there anything we can do? I know we can't stop the gambling. Can we do anything about, I'm trying to word it nicely, the rules around who goes there and whether they can wear pyjamas and all those sort of things that we've seen lately in the city centre? I know they've just come out of yes, but I'm just wondering what rules we have around tidying our city centre up about the people who are wandering around there. So do those establishments have to have rules that are set by council, or can those establishments just let anybody in their pyjamas?
Through you, the Chair, the Department of Internal Affairs manages the monitoring and compliance of all the venues. So in terms of the regulatory role that we have, what you see in front of you in this policy is as far as we can go.
All right, I think at this stage I'm going to put the motion. So noting that we're putting the motion with the amendment that has been brought, which brings us back to the original wording in the agenda. So all those in favour, please say aye. Opposed? Would you like your opposition recorders? Cool, so noting that we have noes from Councillors Leggett and Duncan. That is carried. All right, Councillor Ford. Councillor Ford, if you can hear us, you can come back in. Alrighty, we're now moving through to item 7.2, approval to proceed with road stopping. I'll move the report to open it for discussion. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Waddle. All right, Julia, would you like to introduce this paper?
Thank you, Chair. So we've received 3 applications for road stoppings across the city. And I'll just go through briefly and explain all 3, but I won't do it in the same order as they are on the paper. So the first one I want to talk about is Mana Esplanade. Many years ago, a building was constructed over part of the service lane. The property has recently changed hands, and although there's an encumbrance on the title that allows them to have permission for that building over the service lane, they have approached us and applied for a road stopping application. The second is a piece of unformed legal road off Paikokariki Hill Road. The owners, it's a rural block, and the owners are looking at building a predator-free fence. In order for them to do that, they need a fence across the piece of unformed legal road, which they're not allowed to do. So they've applied for the application to stop that unformed road, which doesn't have any access to any other piece of road in our jurisdiction. The third is part of Stein Ave. Now, so part of Stein Ave was required for the railway, the Kiwi Rail project. Part of the land was required for the pedestrian access, and to allow the required clearances to the fence from the tracks to the fence. So as part of that upgrade, they require a piece of legal road. Prior to the meeting, Councillor Leggett asked me some questions regarding the fence that Kiwi Rail constructed as part of that project. Kiwi Rail have confirmed that they will pay for the graffiti reduction initiative proposal that the Plymouton Residents Association and the Village Planning Project have put to them. So they will fund that painting of that fence and the installation of the art. We're in the process of drafting a maintenance agreement going forward. It will include details such as we will still be responsible for the graffiti removal on the road side of that fence. Kiwi Rail will be responsible for the track side of that fence. But hopefully that answers the questions that you raised.
All right, yeah, Councillor Liga.
Just thank you for that. I think that's a fantastic result. Just to confirm that what they've agreed to is on the roadside.
Yes, it is.
So that means painting the fence and the application of a coating that doesn't attract graffiti or easier to clean graffiti off, plus the installation of the panels, the art panels. Yep. And is the Residents Association, etc., are they aware of this?
No, it happened late yesterday afternoon. Hopefully the Village Planning Coordinator has spoken to them, but it did happen quite late yesterday afternoon.
So thank you. I think they'll be very grateful because it is a significant problem up there with 171 metres of fence. So thank you. Well done.
Yeah, I'll echo that. Are there any other questions or comments on this paper? There do not appear to be any. All right, there we go. So in that case, I will put the motion. All those in favour, please say aye. Oppose? That is carried. Thank you very much, Julia. We'll move now to item 7.3, the finance report for 30 September 2023. I'll move that to get it on the table. Do I have a seconder? Mayor Baker. Thank you very much. So do we have any introduction from officers on this? Looking at Roy.
Through you, Chair. Happy to take question. I'll highlight a couple of points. Unfortunately, Elizabeth is sick today, so any in-depth questions, I might have to come back with some answers to you. But I'll just highlight we are ahead of a budget at both levels of how we measure it, which is both including and excluding the exceptional items. And we have been going through a process of calendarising our budget, so the actual comparison is now much more accurate. We also want to highlight that we are proposing to restate some budgets. I'm now in paragraph 3 here, following the finalisation of the annual report. So those issues around depreciation, etc. It is for management reporting only, so we're not constantly reporting out a variance, which we know what it is. But obviously at year end, we go back to the original budget. So that's what we wanted to highlight there. The other point to note, I think, is that we are seeing the impacts of, I guess, the slowdown in development in the area. Development contributions and income from vested assets are again behind. They were significantly behind at the end of last year, as you recall. And I think I indicated in the LTP paper that we'll be looking to, I guess, reduce those for the first 3 years of the LTP and then sort of crank them up again, just to reflect what we see as a sort of downturn in the economy at the moment. I think that's really the highlights I wanted to show to you. On the capital page on section 8, which is page 451 of our diligent, just to highlight, we are following a traditional trend of capital expenditure behind budget. And if you were to project that 18 million out for the full year, you'd be around the 70 million. So well below our 184 and actually well below even the reduced target that we've set for them. So that's the only thing I wish to highlight. I'm happy to take some questions, and hopefully I'll be able to provide the appropriate answers.
Cool, thanks very much, Roy. I've got Councillor Waddle.
Yeah, I'm just noting your comment around Elizabeth's absence today. I'm just wondering if you have any commentary around the 3% unfavourable on fees and charges and where that lies.
Through you, Chair, I can't actually, even the explanation doesn't give the answer, it just says it's in line with budget of an unfavourable variance. I'd have to go back and find that out for you.
Councillor Philo.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. Just speaking to point 8 on the capital expenditure. Just in the bullet point that you've got around the wastewater, the non-Wellington water projects, is it the Kāinga order? Is it being Kāinga order led, and is that money that we're contributing towards the projects in the Porirua East?
Through you, Chair, just for clarification, you're referring to the asterisk comment about the wastewater full budget includes a 10 million for Bottomley Park? Yes, so that's both Bottomley Park and the Waitanga link roads are not Wellington water projects. They're being driven by council. And working with KO on both of them. Obviously, KO are driving Bottomley Park, and they're also doing the link road work for us.
So is that just our contribution to the KO project, the 10 mil and the 5 mil?
The 10 million is our contribution to the overall budget for Bottomley Park. The 5 million is our full, all that cost for the Waitanga Link Road mains is our cost. This is putting the wastewater and drinking water down the link road, and you might recall we were doing that in conjunction with Wellington Electricity because they have a desperate need to increase their capacity for the growth in that area. So they are going ahead with proposing to go ahead in the next 12 months and dig a trench and put their pipe in there. So we're working with them to minimise our costs as we put in the drinking water which is required from the reservoir for KO's job, and also looking at wastewater for future growth. Does that answer the question?
Yeah, I guess.
Andrew, did you want to add to that?
Yeah.
Bottomley Park is a KO project. The bulk sewer main replacement. Tiaranga's the contractor doing the work. They've got a figure of about $84 million for it, and the council's contribution was originally about 10 million. Might have been inflated a bit. Then there's the high-level reservoir, which is, again, their project. They've got a budget of 44 million in there. There's about 10 or 11 million from the council. And then Roy's talked about the Waitanga Link Road project, which came up more recently. So we haven't paid them any money as of yet, but you can see the work started on Bottomley Park. The other one they're doing is the wetland, and I don't think we've got a contribution to that.
Can you just remind me, it was we had a discussion, and I can't remember Zach spoke to us around, was it this project he was saying it was going to not happen, or is that just a portion of the project, and in particular the link road?
Through the chair, it might be the link road project. Is that the opportunistic project?
Yeah.
So we came to you and said, yeah, it made good sense to put in 2 pipes. One will be a water, one will be wastewater, wastewater. And actually Wellington Electricity also need to connect up a pipe. And so we're looking at that. But in terms that we might not do 2 of the waters, we might do 1 of the water, because it makes sense to help out Wellington Electricity or get their contribution to the trenching. So they're going to have to go ahead anyway and do a trench. We'll probably stick in one of our pipes. And so all that we're doing there is taking some of our capital money and bringing it forward and getting the Tiaranga Alliance to do the work, or KO to do the work, because they're in the neighbourhood. Does that make sense?
Yeah, but Yeah, you go.
Sorry, he said that we may not do the sewer pipe in the sense that the developer may have to do it on site, and they were aware of that.
Yeah.
But the developer would pick up that cost when it goes through. So he was saying that's where the delay was
Yeah.
and may not happen.
And I think the conversation Roy just had with you before about pulling 60 million out of this year's capital program and 60 million out of next year, you go, what are the 60 million, and in that water space, what can we defer and pull back? So we're definitely in that space.
One more question. Cool. Thank you. The other one's just really out of curiosity on page 452. Where do we get revenue from Te Awaroa or Porirua harbour and catchments
That'll be MFE funding.
for the planting?
Riparian, yeah.
Okay,
Riparian
cool.
planting.
Right, thank you.
Councillor Duncan.
Yeah, page 448, expenses. Software as a service is over budget, 244,000. Use of contractors. Is this part of Datascape?
Through you, Chair, correct. And that's covered off, I guess, you'll have that discussion when we get to the project report, I suspect.
Yeah, well, I was looking at that and I'm getting pretty nervous about that, actually.
Councillor Leggett.
Just a comment, tongue in cheek, so the nuclear option is looking more palatable, perhaps, given trends. No, sorry, I just wanted to ask the general question, Roy. Even this is only first quarter. Is there anything else in there that would concern, in terms of trends or whatever, that would concern you going forward into this year?
No, I don't. Through you, Chair. No, not at this stage. I guess we are still worried about the, those non-cash development contributions and the vested assets. That's still a bit of a worry to us. But in everything else, I think, is sort of tracking. There's always the risk around just some timing of some of the projects, and I guess the challenges, and you can see some of the changes already in the Waka Kotahi subsidy. That depends on how quickly the projects go. And obviously they can have an impact, but there's probably nothing that I would note. I think you can expect to see the higher investment revenue continue and the higher interest costs, but they sort of offset each other. It's just the way we're sort of sitting there. So I think at that stage there's nothing that I'm aware of.
All right, there do not appear to be any further comments. So with that, I will put the motion. All those in favour, please say aye. Opposed? That is carried. Thank you very much. That brings us through to item 7.4, the major projects report. So I'm going to move through first of all, I'll move it to get it on the table. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Duncan. So I'm going to go through this in the same way we usually do, where I will touch on each project and give you the opportunity to ask questions as we go. Before we get into that, Lynn, do you have any opening comments? Or are you happy for us to jump straight into questions?
Happy to jump straight into questions, thank you.
Okay, all right. So, beginning with Kiritaki Tuatahi customer first, looking at Councillor Duncan, do you have any questions on that?
There's a litany of places where new software has been added and it's caused absolute disaster in the companies and in the organisations. And it's happening in Britain at the moment where they're spending billions on new systems and they're going down the gurgler. In fact, I think one of them, Birmingham, is actually just about bankrupt as a result of it. I'm scared that this thing is going to get bigger than Ben-Hur for us when I look at the results in this report. Should I be so worried?
Through you, Chair, if I could perhaps answer that. Look, software projects are always a challenge, and this project has taken considerably longer than when we first kicked it off. But I can say we're actually due to go live on the 23rd of this month with the first component of the regulatory suite, and we are programmed to go for the final section of the regulatory suite in the first and second quarters next year. So the big issue and the challenge was when finance was put in 21, but the project has been working pretty well at the moment. I'm confident that it's going to go well going ahead, and we're at that we're past that risk stage from your perspective. It's not going to not work. The challenge for us is it's always going to cost us more than we anticipated. So you'll note I think in the commentary there, it is higher than what was in the budget. We've managed to pull back savings from different parts of the corporate services budget to offset some of that. But it still will be more than the budget at the end of the year, and it relates to primarily we have contractors coming in to actually do quite specialist technical work. We are going to review the makeup of the project team once we've gone live, because we're now for next year it's a different stage, and I'm anticipating that estimated cost of 2.6 will come down because of just the way we handle it. But yeah, appreciate that. I think the mistake was we underestimated the cost for this year, which is why we're over. But the costs are real. Through you, Chair, if I could just add, the other thing is, remember, because we've switched to software as a service, it's all operating costs now, where in the past this would have been capitalised and depreciation, and it just wouldn't have been so obvious, but we're now forced to expense it as an operating cost. That's happening with the worldwide software as a service.
Councillor, we're happy.
Sorry, just in regards to the project itself, not so much the cost. With the datascape, I noticed in here that the high-risk modules includes animals. I do believe a lot of people had paid for their animal dog registration online, but have still yet to receive their tags. The other thing is, as well, is that was this the reason as well that there was rates that didn't come out of direct debit about a month or two ago? Was Datascape? Was it part of Datascape's?
Through you, Chair, I'd have to go and check up on that one, find the issues.
Okay. No further questions on Datascape. We'll move through to Te Ranui Eastern Porirua Development. Any questions on this? No, there appear to be none. Moving through to the district plan. Any questions on the district plan? No, people are comfortable with how that's going, tracking well, all right. Harbour and catchment. No. Councillor Legan.
Oh, just thanks for putting in the hectares that we requested a while back. That was useful. Thank you.
Cool, thank you. Central City wastewater storage. Look at us go, flying through. Inapuru area program. Councillor Filo.
I noticed in there that it said that that Wellington Water have indicated that it will be over the allocated costs.
Sorry, is this wastewater storage?
Right? Yeah. So, did I read that right? It's the second paragraph, or third one. Some contract items will be over the allocated costs. Is that major or?
Through the chair, early days. So there's a big budget, 85 million showing there. And I think what that paragraph alludes to is things have started slowly because of lizards. 7-month delay because of the dock requirement. There's some costs there, but equally there's contingency budgets, and so they're working through where they've got to. So if there are increased costs, it will take a wee while for it to show through. I'd expect another 3 or 4 months, because this project takes quite a while until it's actually completed. So they'll be working on trying to find cost savings with the contractor Downer.
Okay, so what you're saying is because of the delays, they're highlighting that there might be extra costs, but they're going to try and find the savings.
Through the chair, they contracted Downer to be on site and to start working, and then because it took DOC 7 months to process the lizard and to remove the lizards. And I don't think, we quite got to the end of the lizard rehoming, but they're working on another part of the site. The plans changed slightly. So from the contractor's point of view, Downer, they'd provided a price to provide equipment and manpower and do things, and then they're told by the principal, Wellington Water, oh no, sorry, there's a delay, there's a cost involved in that. So what they're indicating here is things have got off to a more expensive start than they were anticipating, but what I'm saying to you is there's a considerable contingency in this project, and they'll be making sure that we'll have to use some of that contingency, and they'll be looking at ways to save costs as the project advances.
Thanks.
So you're moving through to the Kēnapuru area program. Were there any questions on this, Councillor Duncan?
Yeah, package B, Lower Main Drive to Ferry Place shared pathway. It says the design team will reconvene and review previous designs in light of the 30km/h CBD speed change. I would have thought we would have sort of seen those things coming when we were actually doing the design work in the first place. Is there any comment?
Through the chair, the design work started quite a while ago. It was WSP that we contracted to do that, so they did their work. WSP are no longer with us on that project. To I think we say they are 80%. So Wade have had to pick it up and wrapped up as quickly as we can.
Mayor Baker?
Thank you. Yeah, it's the same package really, and the Kēnapuru Drive intersection. So could our roading team keep the Somerset Landings Retirement Village updated and the Landings Facebook page? Because every time I go up there for my clinics regularly, no one knows what's going on. They're all asking to get to the city centre and they can't, to get down there to go shopping. They're going the long way. And the pathway that possibly will join, I think Ngāti Toa are part of putting it in, but they'd like, obviously, Ngāti Toa to go and see them and give them an update on their project. But we're just not keeping that subdivision updated at all about their access to the city centre, and they're having to go the long way all the time. Thank you.
Through the chair, I'll pick that up because 4 discrete sort of packages, council approved $5.9 million. We went on hold. If you remember, we couldn't get funding out of NZTA, so we were a bit uncertain what to tell people. We've got 5.9 to spend this year, and all 4 packages advancing at different stages. But in terms of talking to people, I know package C, for instance, the project manager's out there talking to the property owners, but the Kēnapuru Landing, the retirement home and things like that, we can do a better job in terms of telling people where it's going. Package A, the roundabout, we've agreed with Downer a price. We've agreed on the different components of it, so that work will happen in the new year.
Thank you. It's more about timeframes. Yep. When are they going to be able to get to the supermarket?
Yep. Again, I just make the point, if we are taking 60 million out this year and next year, it won't affect the 5.9, but next year it may in transport affect actually doing something, and you'll have to make those decisions. So we've just got to be a wee bit careful what we tell people.
Thank you.
All right. Wineta to Onopoto shared. Oh, sorry, Councillor Feline. Sorry, I missed you.
Sorry. It was just following up on something you said, Andrew. Did you say that, did I hear right, we've got a employed design engineer? Roading engineer that's doing the...
No,
Wade?
Wade is a company.
Sorry.
Wade's not
Wade is a company's name. Sorry.
All right, moving through to Wineta to Onopoto shared pathway and coastal resilience, and I think I'll front foot this one. There's a lot of red lights here, so if we could have someone speak to where this is to kick this off.
Speak to it, Chair. So difficult, complex project, but actually in not a bad state. So I'm more, don't get too down in the mouth about it. So this year we've got about 1.3 million bucks to spend on it. This month, by the end of November, we'll be resubmitting our consent to do the shared pathway at the same stage as the consent we've got for the coastal aspect of the project. We need Ngāti Toa's letter of support, which we understand is coming to get around that small piece of Maori land. That's the boardwalk, which is feasible. We're very hopeful that, so wrapping up the shared pathway with the coastal consent work, it will all be non-notified. We're in detailed design with TNT. That work's due to be completed, say, March, February, and then we'll be out tendering for construction. So we want to start construction 1st of July, and of course we don't know what the cost of construction will be. 2 items related to construction. You need rock, some rock. Greater Wellington Regional Council needs to dredge Porirua stream, and some of that rock may be acceptable. We've got Ngāti Toa involved in that conversation. We don't want all of it. Greater Wellington would like us to take all of it, but if you take too much, what would you do with it? So we're seeing if that works out. If not, we're probably heading off to the Hutt River to get some rock. So you have to get that sort of material early. The other part of it is the plants for the coastal side. You've got to put your order in and grow the plants well in advance. So again, we'll be doing that in advance of the tendering, and if we end up having purchased plants and don't proceed because of costs or decision making, then Nigel will be reusing the plants elsewhere in his riparian program. So that's working all right. The Maori Land Court side of things, the Maori Land Court had appointed a lawyer for the agents, but that lawyer I don't think has worked out, so they're at stage 1 again. So that delay is happening on their side. There's very little we can do. It has to be sort of lawyer to lawyer. So we're just keeping up comms and trying to keep the relationship, informing them of how we're progressing. So those are the main sort of bits and pieces. Waka Kotahi, in terms of our funding to date, are fully funding us all the way through. It'll be the next decision will be about construction and what the cost is there for that.
So do we have some confidence that next time Council sees Wanera to Anapoto on this item that some of that red will be moving towards amber or green?
I'll ask Lynn about that. Lynn keeps us honest with the flashlights.
Through you, Chair. I believe it will stay red for some time because we still have to finalise what those costs are. We won't know what the final costs are until we've got our detailed design, and even then once we've gone out to market for tender. So there are still risks around that, and there's still risks around funding. So at this stage I would say it would stay red on the finance side and the risks.
All right. What's our sort of ballpark timeline looking like on that before things start to have a bit more certainty around them?
I'll know from you the end of this month or say December whether you've made a decision about what transport capital projects you want to pull out. So you've got capital work and transport along Kenapuru, the roundabout opposite the mall and things like that. You've got some intersections, Whitford Brown, I'm out for tendering at the moment. But when we talk about taking 60 million out this year and next year, it's not just water. Your next big spender is roading. You've got renewals you've got to keep in roading. So it's more these things. So yes, does that help?
It does, thank you. Does anyone else have any questions on this, Councillor Duncan?
So the coastal resilience is probably the most important part of it, isn't it? So is there potential for that to go amber or green, even if the shared pathway doesn't stack up?
Yeah, I think we talked about bundling it, so we kept the NZTA contribution in there. The bundling makes sense to me because you separate it, you get an additional cost. Your contractors do one piece of work, then they disestablish, then they have to come back and things like that. So yes, it could proceed. We'll wait and see how we get through consenting. But what we're trying to do at the moment is minimise costs and bring it all together.
All right, Councillor Whelo.
So are you going to come to us on the 30th with a a list of different roading projects. Is that what you're saying with the Whitford Brown?
On the 30th, Roy will come to you with the capital program. And so some of that conversation is how do you feel about these ones being below the line?
Oh, thank you, Andrew.
Cool. All right, moving through to the flood-prone area response. No questions on this? No. All right. The climate change program. Questions from this? Lots of green, looking good. I think we're happy with that for now. Sorry, was that a hand, Ross, or you?
I thought I just wanted to ask a question about the infrastructure costs of electrifying electric vehicles. So the infrastructure around supplying those vehicles, if you're going to have more of them, is that included in the costs?
Through the chair, it was included in the costs. I'm looking at Nick. Yes, we've tendered the work for the infrastructure in the administration car park, and Thundergrid were successful. And so that side of it is done. I'm not quite sure about the depot, whether we've done that or not.
And that's allowed for in the costs.
Correct. It was all wrapped up in Ben Fountain's.
I thought it was separate, and we didn't have an understanding of what those costs might be. Whether you needed a network upgrade, for example.
Well, I'll check whether it was separate or not. I know I had funding, so it may have come through property. What I can tell you is we've been through the tender. You help me if I'm wrong, Lynn. We've been through the tender process and had to engage with Wellington Electricity about capacity, etc. And well, Helen will help me. Thank you.
Through the chair, we'll ask Helen for an update.
Thank you, Chair. So yes, the cost for the installation of the EV infrastructure at the administration building is included, and for the installation at the depot, and then if we want to put some other infrastructure at other sites, then we would have to come back for funding for that. In addition to that, we've also got some funding in the budget for purchase of electric vehicles for the council's use.
Oh, yeah, look, I wasn't worried about that. I was only, you have indirectly answered the question. Capacity is there. So Wellington Electricity has capacity to be able to deliver to that infrastructure if it goes in.
Yes,
yeah,
they have answered
that's
that
fine.
question.
Yeah.
Cool. Any further questions on that? No? Okay, so moving through to the resource recovery network. Questions? No, we're happy with that. Councillor Ford.
Sorry, no, I was just a quick question because a lot of it was referring to meetings that took place late in October. So I just wondered if there was any update on. This is the resource recovery network. Any commentary?
Sorry, is that the Resource Recovery Network comment? Advisors from Ministry in late October to learn more. Well, I know Nigel's been talking to Ministry for the Environment. Is there anything you want to update? Nothing specifically, Nigel. So we've got nothing more to say. That's the when I talk about the Resource Recovery Network in terms of the financial table, you'll see that's the big costly one. And that's the one we've got no money in our LTP for in outer years. So that's dependent on MFE coming to the ballpark. We've actually got to put in a funding application though. In terms of priorities, our priority is C&D, getting that up and running. And then MFE's more organised in terms of organics. And then we have our conversation about curbside, rubbish and recycling. So the way I'm approaching it with the team is the RRP is more of something that's slightly out.
Councillor Duncan.
Yeah, just in the financials there, as the asterisk by the MFE funding says, there's a further 500,000 funding for the other two councils. Is
Yes.
that each, or is it just 500?
No, that's
for
a
both?
total. So we clubbed together and we got 1.5 million or whatever it was, and they got between them 500. Correct.
Councillor Leggett.
So just to confirm then that means that our commitment, Porirua City Council, is $2 million.
No, 1.5. We're talking the same thing? C&D? When we all joined... when we all joined together for an application to MFE, three councils, we each got a portion of funding. Our funding was 1,500,000. Hut got whatever they got.
So what is Porirua City Council, what do we have to stump up with in terms of CapEx to make this project go ahead?
C&D, we've got overall 4 million because we had in the LTP money to do it, and MFE has contributed to the machinery 1.5 million, but we're doing things like site preparation and putting the containers over the top or whatever, and we'll have EnviroWaste staff running the thing, etc. And then we'll balance it off fees coming in.
Councillor Filo.
So I think what Ross was saying is how much of the ratepayers' money, that's what you meant, is going to go towards it. 2.5 million of our rates, is that?
It's not, well, 'cause some of it's capital sort of money.
CapEx,
Yeah.
2.5.
So the business case for C&D, we're still aiming to do a contract which is cost neutral. It's keeping the C&D out of the landfill and EnviroWaste go and sell it or make a profit from it, and we're looking for that profit to cover the running costs.
All right, Whitford Brown to Parimasa Corridor Program. Looks like that's trucking along fine, no questions.
Just on that count.
Sorry, sorry, first
There is a question.
Councillor Leggett.
Or maybe you were going to cover that. I note on page 476 that the Whitford Brown Papakowhai Road intersection will require further funding if the project is to be delivered as planned. Can you tell us a little bit more about that?
I think that's just that we know costs have gone up, and we'll be out tendering on GET shortly. So we are concerned that our budget is below 2 million, and this could come well up towards 3 million. We'll see what the market says. Because of the nature of the approval from the NZTA, it's sort of in a low-cost thing that's supposed to be under 2 million or close to 2 million. So if it goes up, we're going to have to go back to NZTA anyway, and it'll take longer to do. So Christian's not too far away from pushing the button and going out to the market. He was quite careful in his timing between that and the shared pathway and some other stuff we've got with school safety programs about not swamping the local market at the moment. There are quite detailed conversations that go on with contractors about when have you got capacity and when can you do things. So we'll come back to you on that. And again, my comments about what you're taking out, what you're putting in, because the government's giving us 8 million for the shared pathway, if we've got people walking along it, presumably we'd like them to get across the road. So reasonable priority to try and get it done.
Sorry, just a comment. So you're talking about the shared pathway there. I just make the comment that people are using the path already and they are crossing roads. So we're only doing this because we're getting the money, and we're lumping it all in together. What I'm seeing here is, all other things being equal, a further delay to the intersection there.
Correct. The comment I was going to make through the chair is because we'll have contractors on site working on the shared pathway on sections going as quickly as they can to get it done, There will be traffic disruption. We're coming into summer, which is a popular time for Aotea, so Christian's uniquely aware of that and will try and do his very best, but equally we want to spend the government's $8 million.
Mayor Baker? Okay.
Well, no, it was the it was the fact that we're going out for tender, yet on the 30th we might say to you, sorry. So why would we do that?
30th's not far away.
Okay.
So I'm sort of business as usual and not discouraging a whole lot of people yet, but yeah, we have these conversations about what other levers they might pull. The fact that if we put something up on Gets and then we determine that we decide we're not going to fund something, you will tell us at that time.
All right, that brings us to the end of this item, so I'm going to put the motion. All those in favour, please say aye. Opposed? That is carried. Just noting that brings us to the end of TPK for today. Just want to note this is our final TPK meeting of the year. And also as well, just in particular today, I just wanted to note there's been a few difficult, controversial things we've had to work through, and I've really appreciated the way in which we've been able to get through that in a respectful and robust way. And I think just observing the way that some other councils have been operating, and there's been a bit of media around, I'm very, very thankful for that. So I just wanted to thank everyone for the way that you've all engaged. Thank you. So we're coming to the end. I'll note we're moving into workshop. We will do a karakia at the end of the workshop, so we won't do that right now. So with that, I will close the meeting at 10:26 a.m.